that there's a lens of glasses that LeBron can look through and says, "I've already beat these dudes," and now and when I beat these dudes before, I didn't have Anthony Davis. What do you think for this trade to be successful? Right? Does it depend on what they can add on, or is it no matter if they can't pull off any if they can't get any other better players, if they can't show up the talent on the team very well, like I mean, they're going to sign someone, but if they just can't find anything good on the market, does that make them exempt of this being a bad trade? Is that a good reason for that? Or is this a bad trade if they don't win a championship no matter what?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think it depends on like how you view like these trades. I mean, like if for some people, if Durant and KD and Kyrie, sorry, if Durant, Harden, and Kyrie all re-up with them, and let's say they make a couple of finals appearances but never win, some people might say that that's still that's still a win because they made it to the finals. Some might say, oh well, what if they win a title next year, but then they all leave and they have no picks and they're in disarray? Like, is that a success? I mean, I honestly don't know. I mean, like, I haven't, besides my Giants, like, I haven't had the Mets or Nets win anything so in my lifetime. So I don't know what it's like to have, and the Mets and Nets are my two favorite teams. So I don't know what it's like to win a title, and I'm hoping I get one. But I mean, so it's tough from that perspective. I mean, I think from the LeBron perspective, the Lakers, which I do think is what's going to end up being like the hot button topic to talk about, especially when Kyrie comes back. Mm-hmm. Like, you can't beat the Lakers, right? Like playing their game, which I think was a little bit kind of what the Heat did last year. They were kind of like this. They were kind of also playing tough, gritty. They obviously had Hero and Robinson, but they didn't feel like as much of a shooter team, especially because Hero was a rookie.
Right.
And this Nets team is like the opposite of what that team is. You know what I mean? Like this Nets team is going to be like, even if you say Durant and LeBron cancel each other out, it's like, all right, so then you got Davis versus like the Jeff Green DJ combo, which is a nightmare. But then you have the Kyrie Harden thing versus Schroeder and Caruso and those guys. So it's an interesting matchup, but I do think that they're not. I mean, they can't be like what the Lakers are looking for, because the Nets can get we saw today the Nets can get 15 points pretty quickly. It was very like Warriors-esque.
Yeah, no, that scoring was never going to be the problem. The Nets are an interesting experiment. The Nets. So, people who have ever said the words, "You can't win a championship without defense," we're going to find out. Yep. You could not ever put three players together. These are the three most efficient scorers in the NBA as well. They're not just the three best scorers. They're not just the volume. Like, Allen Iverson would just put up so many shots that he would get his stat lines. It never was like, 30 on 15 shots or anything like that. It was 30 on 28 shots with Allen Iverson. These guys are, like, Harden is just going to draw fouls no matter what. He's also going to get 11 assists easily. He's just like like the way he plays ball. And it's gonna fit together kind of nicely, because I think Kyrie is a shooting guard anyway. Like Harden is a shooting guard by name only.
Right.
Kyrie is a point guard by name only. He's not really a pass first. Harden is more likely to have a 10-plus assist year than Kyrie is. This is incredible when you think about it. But The problem is, no matter how good this offense is going to be, the question is, the experiment is, can a team, even the most supreme offensive team ever put together, you've never seen three great offensive players like this come together and play on one team. So the question now is, can that team, can the best outcome or the most perfect players to be in this D'Antoni system, having those three guys, can it win a championship? Sam, answer that question.
Yeah, I really think they can. And I honestly think when we're looking back on this trade, I think, like, besides the Nets, if it blows up, like, one way or another, I think the team that's the biggest loser out of all this is the Sixers, because I just think it's clear, like, if they, like, I just think it's honestly, as good as a GM as Daryl Morey has been throughout his career, like, to have the opportunity to get Harden and give up, like, Simmons and, like, maybe, like, Thibault and picks or something like that, like, I just think it's malpractice to not make that deal when, like, you basically know what this team is at this point. Like, they kind of still play it. I know they have Doc Rivers there and he's won a title, but, like, I don't know about you, like, when you watch the Sixers this year, like, it looks very, very similar to prior years. Like, I'm sure he'll get more out of it than Brett Brown did, because what Brett Brown did was not very impressive, but, like, I just think you put Harden with Embiid, and that's, like, basically like a Nets nightmare. That's basically their worst case scenario. And so getting Harden out of the Sixers, or even, like, if another team had popped up and tried to get him, like Toronto, whoever it was, I don't know. I just think the Nets have to think, like, the East to me is just not very impressive, and I'm knocking on wood as I say this, but, like, unless the Heat make a deal for Beal, which I think is gaining a little bit of steam and is possible, like, I just don't. I don't know totally how you keep up with this Nets team, especially because, and this I think was the key to the deal, and this is the one place that I will say where I have really changed a little bit since the deal was done, and it was this. I said to you a bunch of times before the season started, I said, the one thing I want with this team is they absolutely need to, like, cut down the amount of, like, quote unquote playable guys they have, because at a certain point, like, with a lot of these guys, it's just repetitive. And the Nets have a lot of talent on this roster, and, like, being able to say you go 14 deep is nice and all, but I'd rather go 10 deep or 9 deep and they're actually, like, all good and playing. And I think the key in what we've seen is, like, you know what, like, giving more minutes to Reggie Perry, that actually could be kind of nice. Giving more minutes to Bruce Brown, like, that can be good. Like, we don't need to, like, disperse it in all these different ways and give certain minutes to certain people where it doesn't totally make sense and where it's repetitive. And the truth is, like, the difference at the end of the day between, like, giving some extra minutes to LeVert versus splitting some of LeVert or Dinwiddie's minutes up, let's say, and giving it to a combo of Bruce Brown and Shamet and whoever it is, it's not that big. It's not that big of a difference. Whereas the difference between LeVert and Harden is a massive difference. That's what wins championships, is getting that guy. And so, and I think you saw that today. And what I think Nash is going to have to do, which I think is going to be, like, really interesting, and this is when we'll start putting our doctor hats on in terms of how he dissects the lineups, is, like, he's going to be able to stagger minutes in ways that are, like, devastating for opposing teams. Like, he's going to be able to take out Harden maybe early, and then take it, and then it's KD and Kyrie, and then take Kyrie out, and then maybe put Harden, and then maybe let Harden run the team by himself, then let Kyrie run the team by himself. Like, there's a lot of different ways that this can work out, and I think the other thing that can't be underestimated, which you definitely alluded to, which I think is spot on, is, like, dude, this team has 3 roster spots. Like, people are going to get bought out. Assuming people still want to play with these 3 guys, like, people are going to want to compete. They're in a good city. Like, people will have no issue, like obviously living in Brooklyn for a short time period. Like, I think people are going to want to join this team, and I think there could be a nice buyout market, because if you, as you've mentioned a bunch of these podcasts, like, there's also a lot of owners that don't want to spend a lot of money right now.
Right.
So,
right.
I don't know.
No, I look. Hearing how the trade went down, or in the rumor mill, I thought it'd be good to just make an amalgamation in my mind of what I've heard that I believe. So it's not like, oh, who told you this or who told you that. This is what I believe based off of what I've heard. A lot of what's going on right now is because Dinwiddie got hurt. They had the exact same pieces this summer, and if they were willing to give it up, give these exact same pieces up in the summer, I think James Harden is already here in Brooklyn. So what I think happened is Dinwiddie first gets hurt. The team is 500. And we're not dominating the way you would think that the Nets would be dominating. And then the Kyrie thing happens. If I'm Joe Tsai and this Kyrie nonsense happens after Dinwiddie gets hurt, I'm going back to Sean Marks and saying to him, I want Harden and I want Harden now. And when you really think about it, even though I think there was other moves that could have been made that would have made the Nets a stellar team, I feel like the Nets fixed their 4 position and they're a great team, regardless of what. Just having Kyrie and Durant.
Yep.
But if you're Joe Tsai and you're looking at what you're paying to the luxury tax for, you're paying the luxury tax to win it all. So my message to Sean Marks would have been, are you sure now, especially now that you have no backup point guard, especially now that this point guard is your point guard is AWOL and you don't know where he is and whether he wants to play basketball anymore? You really don't have the answer to that question, Sean Marks. And I in my imaginary real life Joe Tsai voice, he always calls Sean Marks, not Sean, not Marks. He calls him Sean Marks. Anyway, Sean Marks, if you do not deliver a championship because you love these other players that was here before I even got here, even before I became the full owner, if this fails because you didn't pull the trigger and then the Sixers are able to get James Harden, if that was, I can see Joe Tsai doing that. I believe the people who say at the end Joe Tsai was like, we got to make this happen. And I'm now even believing they might have known what was going on with Karras before this happened. Now, that's not a true part of my assessment. I'm not saying that happened. I think all the other things that I said, except that part, could happen. But could you imagine if they knew what was going on with Karras and threw him in a trade? Do you even think that's possible, Sam?
Someone asked me that today. I really hope that they like. I mean, look. Here's the deal. Bobby Marks tweeted this. I think it's true. And this is why I'm optimistic. Knock on wood for LeVert, is because like if they saw it and they thought it was like horrible, I think the deal just doesn't happen. Like, you know what I mean? Like, no one had played yet at that point. Like, the reason why an extra second round pick ended up being given to the Pacers today was because of what they found. Like, so that's why I think that there probably was not like insane malpractice on the Nets.
And I don't think the Pacers were trying to compete with, this year with Karras anyway. I think what they're trying to do is to get under the salary cap, save some money, and maybe have a player that they can.
Again, I clearly wanted.
Say again.